So despite the common opinion that we know nothing about GTA 6, we surprisingly know quite a lot. A good example of some of this information is the patents filed by Take-Two Interactive for different AI technologies that they're looking to use. Now Take-Two have actually filed hundreds of patents for various technologies, but for this video we're only going to pay attention to the specific patents that have Aaron Garbert's signature on them. Now for those that don't know, Aaron Garbert is the art director for Rockstar Games, and it's highly unlikely that he's going to be signing his name and Rockstar's alongside patents for Toon Blast, for example. So we can safely assume that all of these patents are for Rockstar's usage, and let's be honest, there's only one game Rockstar are focusing on at the moment. Now throughout this video I'm going to use clips from previous videos, as some of these features I've explained in full detail, and rather than you guys having to hunt through all of my archive of videos, but also in this video we're not just going to cover AI, we're going to talk about all the different technologies that we're aware are going to be used in GTA 6. Hopefully this video explains everything you need to know. So it's no secret that in Grand Theft Auto 6 we're going to see a load of new technology being implemented into Rockstar's new game engine. So in today's video we're going to take a look at some of the AI technology that we can expect to see in GTA 6, and some of the things we're going to look at are character AI models, vehicle AI models, and environment AI models. And also we're going to try and determine what is AI and what is actual programming, and how programming can actually influence AI. Plus we're going to take a look at a patent filed by Take-Two Interactive for a new immersive character animation program. Now the term AI is thrown around a lot in this industry, and not just in this industry, in everyday life now. So in this video I'll break down the difference between physics and animations that are coded into the game and sequences that actually use AI models. Before we get into today's video, please consider liking and subscribing. I'm trying to grow the channel, so any support you can give by subscribing, liking, commenting, whatever it might be is massively appreciated. So the first patent we're going to look at is the NPC AI ones. In previous GTA titles, NPCs had predetermined paths. So whenever an NPC would follow their daily routine, their daily route, their daily activities, that was all predetermined pretty much by path nodes that say, this person needs to go here, and this is the exact route they'll take. This not only applied to NPCs walking around places like Los Santos, but also applied to the cars and the various planes and other vehicles that we'd see around the city. Yes, there were variables like, for example, that determined route will be replaced by a different NPC, but there was a limited amount of preset parameters that were put in place to make the experience a little bit convincing and make the world not feel empty, but they weren't realistic or convincing enough to make us think, oh wow, this is a really believable world. But it looks like for GTA 6, Rockstar Games are going to try and combat that. So in GTA 5, the only way to end this predetermined route by an NPC was to hit them with a vehicle or, of course, interfere permanently. But Take-Two Interactive, which is Rockstar's parent company, have recently filed a new patent which gives details on a new AI system that they want to utilize for future games. Now within this patent it doesn't specifically say GTA 6, but it's the only game in the whole of Take-Two's roster that this patent could actually apply to. And this patent details a new way for NPCs to traverse the map and to get from one location to another that isn't the same as what they've done previously. So the only thing that really stays the same between previous things that we've seen from Rockstar Games is that the NPC does have a start location and an end location. They have an A and a B point, but everything in between that is what has changed in this patent. So for example, if a vehicle is driving from one location to another and during this route they encounter a blockage, for example, if they're driving down the highway and you park a bus across the exit, they will then continue on to the next exit or look for an alternative route to get to that end location. Sorry for the bad diagram. So this new NPC AI system is essentially programmed to take into account real-world events, whether it be road blockages, weather conditions, or even police chases, and this is something that can be quite easily translated to the police systems within the game so they can traverse the map quicker to get to the point of an emergency. Another thing that we can learn from this patent as well is the inclusion of weather, but we'll get back onto that later in this video. So within the patent, it also says that this applies to cars, boats, aircrafts, and all of the vehicles in the virtual world, which is very interesting because with roads, they have a route. A road is a map, but the way that this is going to be plotted in the air is going to be very interesting to see how Rockstar pull this off, in the air and in the ocean, because of course those aren't very linear things, so to see how Rockstar pull this off by setting predetermined routes around the waterways and in the air will be really cool to see, especially when there's different variables involved. For example, if you fly directly at a plane, will it divert from its path? All questions I'm sure will be answered when we get the game. Simply put, this AI system comprises of the fork model. So if they can't take route A, they'll try route B. If something blocks their route on route B, they'll try route C to finally get to that destination. Something else that's also detailed in this patent is a self-awareness system for this AI model. So it knows the speed of the area, it knows what speed it should be doing, it knows different speeds for highways, back roads, and private driveways. There are way more variables that will make the experience far more immersive and realistic. Now in this patent, it talks about the weather, and the weather has been a massive source of debate for a lot of the community, because realistically speaking, there should be real-world destructive elements caused by the weather in the game. However, there's been a lot of talk about potentially this being pulled from the game due to limitations and constraints by not only the hardware, but also the pressure that Rockstar Games is under to actually deliver this game. But the mention of this AI system being able to be dictated by weather as one of the variables is very interesting, because that could mean that weather dynamics in the game could affect the routes being taken, as it suggests in the patent. Now, whether this applies to vehicles like cars and motorbikes in the game, I don't know. Maybe this is something that they'll implement for planes, for example, when it rains or when there's storms. Planes might fly at different altitudes, or for example, boats may take different routes in the ocean when there's massive waves and really diverse weather systems. We really don't know, but the inclusion of weather into this AI system is a really interesting point, because it would be very interesting to see how the weather actually dictates the paths that these NPCs and vehicles take. Now, before we talk about the police AI system, I have a little announcement to make. So you guys may have seen that I partnered with Cinch Gaming for their custom controllers, and their sister company Alt Customs for their custom keyboards. Well, they actually have another company called Aim Assist, which is a healthier alternative to energy drinks. Their Cinch berry flavour, by the way, is honestly fire. So all of the links to these three companies are down below. And of course, any purchases support the channel. So let's talk about police AI stuff. So the first thing we need to talk about is the leaks we got back in 2022. For those that don't know, we got 90 minutes of pre-alpha gameplay footage from when a hacker from here in the UK hacked into Rockstar Games' Slack Messenger account and stole the video files. From one of the clips in that footage, there was a mission in a diner called Hank's Waffles, where we could see that Lucia and Jason had got a wanted level. But when they got the wanted level, the police didn't arrive straight away like in GTA 5. There was a build in response time, so Lucia and Jason had more time to collect more money from behind the tills, and in theory this will give you time to plan a getaway. During this period of time, they were able to rob and loot pedestrians within the diner, retrieve money from behind the tills, and also try and control and manipulate the situation they were in, which is the first time we've ever seen this from a Grand Theft Auto game. So with this police AI technology and this build up in response time, what does that actually mean for the game? Well, this means that every single thing that we do within the game that involves a heist, a robbery, or anything like that is a far more calculated decision. So for example, we can have the option of taking more money from the location we're in, whether we're robbing a shop or a diner for example, or bailing quicker and being more likely to get away. So in the footage we saw in the leaks, Jason and Lucia actually came head to head with the police as they left the diner because they left it too long and they waited out the response time. It's very clear that in the footage the developers were testing this system. But this is something that I find really exciting, because every Grand Theft Auto game has always been very linear. There was nothing that you could do differently to another person that was playing. Yes, there might be different ways that you can do something, or you can speed run the game, but there was no strategy involved other than what the game told you to do. Now the next thing I want to talk about is vehicle AI within the game. Now normally in games there's physics engines, which basically is a preset rule of parameters where if someone falls off a building, this is how they fall. If a car hits a wall, this is how it crashes. And there's all sorts of different building blocks around that to create crumple effects and to create more realistic crash dynamics and more realistic vehicle movement. Now in Grand Theft Auto 4, I think Rockstar did an amazing job at this, at creating more realistic crash damage, but the problem was that the cars felt really boaty. Like when you turned a corner, it felt like the car was going to roll over. It's almost like they went too far with it. Now in Grand Theft Auto 5, Rockstar did the complete opposite thing and made the driving experience more arcade-like, which was way more fun to drive the cars but way less realistic. Now it's theorized that in Grand Theft Auto 6, Rockstar are going to take a hybrid of both the GTA 4 system and the GTA 5 system and then improve upon that. Now from the Grand Theft Auto 6 trailer, we can see various upgrades to the game engine. So from the trailer, we can actually see that the suspension movements of the cars behave very differently. For example, this shot inside the car shows that the car kind of wallows a bit more left to right, as we saw in Grand Theft Auto 4, but it doesn't look like it's been taken to the same extremes that it was taken to in GTA 4. which I'm very pleased about because it's nice to actually be able to drive the cars. But from this shot here of the dirt bikes moving and the way that the vehicles move in the background of this shot, it's very easy to see that every different vehicle behaves slightly differently. Now in Grand Theft Auto 4, a lot of the cars behaved quite differently to each other and it was great, but in GTA 5, pretty much all cars behave the same. Within reason, I'm not saying every car is the same, but there isn't as much differentiation between the models. Now it's time to talk about this interior generation system. So Rockstar Games filed a patent for the GTA 6 interiors, and it's extremely interesting and it tells us a lot about what we might be seeing in GTA 6. Thank you to one of my members on my Discord for suggesting this video, it's massively appreciated, and I would have never found this without their suggestion. This is buried at the bottom of a patent document. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the patent that Take-Two Interactive have filed is essentially a way to randomize interiors within the game. Now in one of my previous videos, I suggested that maybe we wouldn't have as many interiors as people would think due to the complex modeling that's involved. Now, I'm still of the mindset that not every single interior in the game would be visitable just because of rendering. It would be an absolute nightmare. Even based on localized rendering close to the character, it still would be really intensive, especially on games consoles such as the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox. But in this document, we can see that Rockstar Games has basically created a way to randomize different assets within the interior. In another advantageous embodiment, the disclosed systems are used to procedurally generate building interiors, which allows the generation of a large number of different interiors from a relatively small set of interchangeable part objects. These parts would include things such as floor assets, ceiling assets, wall pieces, and numerous interior items for the placement within the room. Variants of these items can be made available in several color palettes, which can be applied across the parts in a variety of ways. Arbitrary room shapes and sizes, including outdoor space, can be populated using the disclosed system. However, in some advantageous embodiments, this system is applied to the rooms of similar shape and size, such as an apartment building where many rooms throughout the building would be essentially the same floor plan. Thus, the wall, ceiling, and fixtures in these spaces would be similar. Accordingly, multiple apartment interiors could be easily created based on the same interior plan, but with different combinations of parts and colors. This would give the impression of a great deal of realistic variation from a relatively small set of data. The various parts in the room can be tagged with characteristic data, such as the property tags disclosed in the previous embodiments. So what they're essentially saying here is that each property will be tagged. For example, you'll have a high-end apartment, you'll have a rustic apartment, you'll have an old apartment, or you may have an old house, a new house, an office building, a closed down office building. We'll have many different variations of tags that are assigned to different properties. So for example, a nice high-rise tower apartment that's supposedly a new build would be tagged with characteristic data, which then these assets would be applied to. So for example, we could have a brand new kitchen in an apartment, and new modern apartment could be the tag that's applied to that property. So within that kitchen there may be marble worktops, there might be minimalist design chairs and stuff. There will be different objects that are assigned to that data set that is linked with the tag that's given to the property. And then this patent goes on to say a bit more. As with the previous embodiments, rules can be used to establish relationships between the various objects. This allows a selection of parts to be grouped together in arbitrary ways. For example, a bathroom group could comprise of a group of tiled floors, tiled walls, baths, sinks, and mirrors, together with a light blue and white color palette. Variations on this group could be provided by changing the colors or the particular versions of the tiles, sinks, bathtubs, etc. The bathroom classification allows the statement of the needed parts, along with the ability to select variations of each of the constituent parts. The metadata for the individual parts can also include different levels of wear and tear. For example, the parts can be labeled high-end, low-end, new, or worn. This allows the creation of high-end bathroom by specifying a bathroom with new, high-end tags, which will select the corresponding objects for the inclusion in the room. Now, let's not get confused here. This isn't talking about us customizing the house to our own requirements. We haven't seen any information yet that means that we could customize or do our own apartment or build our own house, for example, in the game. We haven't seen anything like that yet. This is more referring to randomized generation of interiors. Now, this isn't something that will be happening necessarily live within the game, actively within the game. For example, it's not saying that you're going to walk into an interior and then come back later in the day and it's going to be different. This is more to do with the development of the game. This patent's directly linked to actually building the game itself. Now, there are some ways that this can be implemented live in the game, for example, with objects like fruit bowls or objects like paintings or pictures that might change throughout the lifespan of that property, but the physical properties and the textures within the property are probably linked to the actual build process of the game, not actually built within the game engine as something that changes over time. Now, this technology isn't just about the actual objects within the interior of the home either. This is also linked to how clean or dirty a place is. For example, here it talked about a node graph, which is essentially a massive graph that has different parameters on it. So it could be higher up one axis, higher up another axis, and it basically means that an apartment could be extremely dirty, a little bit dirty, but there's many values in between not dirty and very dirty. So it's pretty much a sliding scale on both axes of how dirty that item is. The graph will provide the universe of possible rooms. In order to establish a particular interior, the designer or game script need only to provide a block of parameters that stores a value to feed each node into the ordered graph. These parameters select the path to recreate an interior. The parameters can range from being a simple on-off, for example to control an optional rug appearing or not, to any value, for example to control the number of tins appearing on a shelf or the degree of dirtiness on a door. In addition, to the extent parameters are not specified for a particular node, a random path through the node. In this way, a large number of complex interiors can be created that are plausible because they follow the rules dictated by the graph, using a relatively small set of data, e.g. the parameter block. The parameter block can store or transmit a complete description of these interiors. The parameter block structure can establish precisely which of these items in the description exist for a particular location, and it also provides any required additional data for the items which need it. Now, there's a lot more information here, but the one thing that I really want to get onto, and it's a part that kind of piqued my interest, modding the game. If we know that there's a piece of software built into the game code that allows variables to be dictated by the game, whether it's in-engine or done during the development of the game, there's definitely going to be an option in there for us to be able to actually mess with the game code and, with the different variables that they've plugged in, create custom apartments effectively quite easy. Now if I scroll up, so here we can see an example of these different parameters. So for example, you have a hall table, you have an ID, which I believe is the position value. I could be wrong on that. If you guys know, let me know down in the comments. You have the property, the material, and the value, for example, is oak. Property where, value 0.3. Then you have vase, material, glass, property color, value blue. So in theory, if we can access the code for the game, which, let's be honest, it's not going to take us long to be able to do that. There's so many talented people out there that are able to break into game code. We could adjust all of this. We can customize all of this and assign our own values. Yes, it'd probably be a bit annoying. It'd be a lot easier if they just gave us the option to do it in the game, which is the only reason that I'm lending to the fact that they may be giving us the option to customize the apartments in some capacity, because all of the data is already there for it. But rather than randomization, giving us the option to control it would be a lot easier. But regardless, we're definitely going to be able to modify our houses. Like, if we can get into the game code for the game, surely this can't be the hardest thing to do. As long as we can locate the file within the game, us adjusting the code can't be too difficult. Now, the only way this could be difficult is if there's actually a separate engine that this software runs off, which controls all these parameters, and then for us to be able to actually get into that engine and stop the automatic randomization of these numbers and actually have them as fixed values, that could be a bit harder. But I don't know too much about the coding side of modding games and everything, so you guys will have to tell me in the comments down below. And this section here basically says that there'll be a string of code assigned to a property that has all of this data input within it, and that code can be randomized essentially. So for example, we'll have apartment 53B on Main Street, which would be tiled kitchen floor, kitchen walls, message board, cupboards, boxes of cereals, lounge walls, etc. I'm not going to read all of that, you get the idea. And it says here this data establishes exactly which parts of the top description of high-end apartment are to be used to construct the apartment 53B Main Street. Added to this data would also be any extra parameters which can be used to potentially modify some of the items where desired. And at the bottom of this page, it basically goes into what the definitions of each of these systems are and what they're trying to patent. Because with a patent, you have to actually state what that piece of software is claiming to do and why no one else should be able to recreate that. That's a really important part to people creating patents, whatever it is. And also within this article, it goes into a bit more detail about how these different factors can change over time. So for example, over a period of like a week, the floors would get dirtier, or the house would get dirtier, or the apartment would get dirtier, and various factors change depending over time. This shows us that the apartments and the buildings will evolve, very similar to what we had in Red Dead Redemption 2, where over a period of time, buildings would get built, campsites would get destroyed. There's many different variables there that will allow us over time to witness change happening to the world around us, which is the one thing that GTA 5 dramatically missed on.
Next, we're going to talk about the online model that Rockstar will use for its servers.
So Rockstar filed a patent a couple of years ago which could potentially tell us how GTA 6 Online is going to run. Now the reason I'm making this video is at the time when this patent was filed, there was a little bit of buzz online, there was a couple of articles that spoke about it, but now we are way closer to the game actually coming out and we know more about it. I thought it'd be good to bring this back up again because it would appear like the world has forgotten about this leak that came out years ago from the patent. So there's a few things mentioned in this which aren't that interesting, but there are some things that are really interesting. So firstly, the patent refers to there will be seamless lobby
switching. GT Online runs on a P2P model where players in the same lobby can interact with each other. Often gamers need to switch lobbies due to errors, bugs, griefers, etc. Sometimes gamers even have to go to a solo lobby to play in peace. All this lobby switching comes with a massive load time each time. Tell me about it. Innovative systems and methods for session management are disclosed for providing a multiplayer game with seamless splitting and merging of network sessions. This implies that switching from one lobby to the next will not encounter a loading screen, hence the experience will be seamless and more time will be saved to play the game. Now I want to say here, the P2P model that Rockstar have always used is not only one really dangerous and not a very secure way of doing it, and it opens people up to hacking and all sorts of other issues. It also suffers from the issues that I mentioned here, which is when you're switching between lobbies, you're basically disconnecting from one network session to another, which is one, really outdated, but secondly, it's just boring. I've before been in sessions in GT Online where I've left because of griefers, tried to join another session, been griefers again, and after like switching sessions 3 or 4 times, you just kind of give up. Like, you just can't be bothered anymore. Obviously now they've changed it is a bit faster, and it's a way, not seamless by any means, but it is a way faster process. It's still annoying, so negating this issue would make the online experience way more fun. More time per session would be spent playing the game rather than just trying to manage your sessions. Now the next thing is the thing that I find the most exciting, which is that the map is going to be split into numerous sessions. GT Online currently runs on a peer-to-peer model. This means that there's no dedicated servers or player networks that interact to send and receive information. This model, however, is a huge issue and limits the game a lot. A lot of onus is also laid on the gamer's internet connection quality. The patent states that to negate any unnecessary loading and or stalling, there will be a seamless session management system. Take-Two said that they would split the map into multiple sessions to make it seamless. This implies just for perspective's sake that if a player drives from Vinewood to LSIA, they would have to join and leave multiple sessions that way. So this could potentially mean that in the leaks that we saw back in 2022, where there was some indication of lobby sizes of somewhere from 28 to 30 players, this could mean that potentially each individual lobby is just a section of the map. As we can see from this diagram here, splitting off certain sections of the map into certain lobbies would allow more players across the whole map, but also without having to load 100 people into one session. This is essentially what the patent explains, and that is extremely interesting. And it says underneath, GTA 6 will see separate areas of the map as separate sessions. The above picture illustrates the idea that the patent presents. Ignore the map as it's just being used for filling purposes. If the separate locations on the map represent individual sessions, the game will always have a large population. Even if the lobby capacities are not increased and there are no dedicated servers, the map will have more players. Using the above image as a reference, it is easy to understand. Hypothetically, each lobby can hold a maximum of 40 players and the map is divided into 6 sessions. The map can be populated by 240 players at a time, 40 by 6. Every gamer can interact with each other just by meeting at a specific location. So overall, this is a system that I would love to see implemented. However, I do hope this means we get away from the P2P model. It's just rubbish. We're way past that now technologically wise. We don't need to be doing that. But whether we stick with that or whether we go to a new server based model, having different sessions split by the map is really interesting. The only thing I can see being an issue here, what if everyone wanted to congregate around Vice City and that was one section of the map? Would there be a limit of how many people can get into Vice City? Like how does that work? I can see so many flaws to this system that in theory should work. The maths adds up, 6 sections of a city, or maybe like 10 sections or whatever it might be, with different lobbies happening with each of them. The maths never applies to how GTA players act when they get mad and start rocketing people in a city. Everyone's going to congregate around Vice City. It's the way it's going to be. There is no getting around that. So how does that negate the issue? But also there's another thing to say here, which is a bit of a caveat. Just because Rockstar have patented something, or patented, whatever the word is, I make English people mad, I make Americans mad whenever I say one or the other. Just because that there's been a license document saying that they have the technology to do something, doesn't mean they're going to introduce it. This could have been just them experimenting with something and saying, hey, this is how we're thinking of doing it. Sweet, let's just trademark that idea so no one can steal it. Like, that's usually the way that companies like Take-Two and Rockstar work. This doesn't mean that's definitely the system that we're going to see, but the leaks we had back in 2022 suggested that the lobby sizes would be between 28 and 30 people, which is tiny, especially for how big the map is. So this is the only thing we've seen so far that would explain how that could work if the lobby wasn't the full map. The lobby was a section of the map. But then again, like I've just said, we have the issue about people trying to traverse the map and congregate in one area. There is no point in having 100 people in the map if you're never going to see the 100 people in the map. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense. The only way it could work which would be absolutely rubbish, and if Rockstar do this, I'm going to be furious, is if you have to actually load in a part of the map, like you go to your menu and you select, I want to go to Port Gellhorn, and only Port Gellhorn loads. But that would be taking things back to the 1990s, and I don't understand why they would do that. That doesn't make any sense. So like I've said in other videos, implementation is 9/10 of the law. Like, I don't care how they do it, as long as it's seamless and it works nicely. Like, that's the most important thing. Is Rockstar always find a way to make things just kind of work, although that they can never please everyone. Like, there's things that I love about the game that other people hate, and there's things that other people hate that I love. Like, Rockstar will never please all of us, but they're not going to make a system that just doesn't work. And if they do, obviously with the uproar that comes from it, they'll probably fix it. So it'd be interesting to see how they implement this system and how they implement the whole idea of managing this, like managing these different sessions and lobbies in one map. Next, I want to talk about AI being used on textures. Some people have theorized that certain textures of the game could change over time. For example, as something gets older, the color could change of it. Concrete could change over time, wood could change over time, and this is an aging dynamic that we actually had in Red Dead Redemption 2. Some things in Red Dead Redemption 2 over time would change. Now, in Red Dead Redemption 2, all of these changes over a period of time were programmed in. For example, it was a conscious decision from the developers to make that happen. But with AI technology being where it is now, it's very likely that you can just train an AI model to do that for multiple textures within the game. You feed it the texture file and tell it over XYZ period of time, change things. Now, over time, changes that we can expect to see in GTA 6, for example, buildings being finished, which is the biggest complaint Rockstar had about the buildings in GTA 5, other than the fact that we couldn't go in any of them, and I've done a full video about that. But in GTA 6, we theorised that over time, probably buildings will change, because that's something that happened in Red Dead Redemption 2. Them not introducing that to GTA 6 would make absolutely zero sense. Now, the most important thing in this video, which is the patent filed by Take-Two Interactive for a new immersive character animation program. Now, according to this article posted by Kotaku, a recently uncovered Rockstar Games patent suggests the developer could be using new technology to make NPCs in its game more immersive, particularly when it comes to the highly anticipated action-adventure crime sim GTA 6. As spotted by Reddit user Tobolobble, I hate Reddit usernames, you can read, former Rockstar Games lead AI and gameplay programmer Tobias Tobias issued a patent in April called the System and Method for Virtual Character Locomotion. Real catchy. The 11-page document, as described on LinkedIn, was architected and implemented for games at the Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption studio. According to the paper's abstract, the patent houses a system and method for controlling the animation and movement of in-game objects. In layperson's terms, tech should make characters way more lifelike. And the Reddit user detailed the patent's content on their Reddit post. Based on this patent, it seems like they're using a clever system. They built a library of small building blocks for character movements. These blocks can be combined in various ways to create a wide range of animations. For instance, think about the character in the game walking in the rain, feeling tired, or getting injured. Instead of designing separate animations for each of these situations, they use these building blocks to put together the character's movements naturally. This means GTA 6 can have more diverse and lifelike animations. So when you play GTA 6, you'll see characters moving in ways that match the weather, their energy level, and their injuries. This makes the game feel more immersive. It's like having characters that can adapt to different situations, making the game world feel more real and thrilling. Now, something I want to add in here is that there's a blurred line between AI and between programming. So what this sounds like doesn't actually sound like AI. It sounds like a form of it, but if they're setting up variables like rain can make someone walk like this, being shot on the leg can make someone walk like this, combine those two together and move that within a sliding scale of is it more rainy or are they more injured, that isn't AI. But I guess it could be because they're using a model to determine where to move that parameter. And where I think AI comes into this is, for example, where a person is shot on their body, where they're injured when it comes to a physical altercation. Maybe that particular system of how their body mechanics work in relation to the environment around them, maybe that's AI. But what's being described here, to me, sounds more like a programmed input. But then again, does it lean more towards programming or does it lean more towards AI? You guys decide down in the comments. Let's go a bit more in depth on this character animation AI system. So Rockstar Games have come up with their own revolutionary software to completely change the way characters are animated in the game. A massive thank you to Samyam for doing an original video on this. Her initial video went into the more intricate details of how this new technology works, but in this video I'm going to try and explain my simplified understanding of how it works. So in GTA 5, the characters were animated basically with different variables. So for example, they had running, walking, shooting, and those are the sorts of parameters we really had to work with. Of course, we had directional information depending where the character was facing and what angle they were shooting at, but it wasn't a perfect mechanism. So for example, if you were pointing your gun in that direction and you were running, your legs weren't exactly facing the same direction. It was a bit off. It wasn't perfect. But Rockstar have recently filed their own patent for their own way of creating character animations in GTA 6. It's essentially a more expanded version of the Red Dead Redemption 2 way of doing things, but with a lot more AI involved. So they've created their own AI, and what this AI does is basically take a blackboard, which is the state of emotion the character's in, whether they're drunk, happy, sad, whether they're walking through snow, whether they are slipping on ice, whether it's raining outside. They've taken all of this information from the game engine and applied this to character animation states. For example, they might send an input to one arm, an input to another arm, an input to the head, an input to the legs. Basically, it's feeding off a database taken from the game engine. Now, originally, the way that this worked was, it was literally just an animation sequence programmed into the character. So the way that AI works is quite complicated, but let's try and make it simple. Basically, over time, they've given their character animation AI a load of inputs. So for example, they've taught it that the character might be drunk, that it's windy outside, that it's raining outside, and maybe wind and rain might be an important one with where Vice City is located on the map. And whenever their AI has spat out an incorrect animation sequence, for example, Lucia being drunk but walking perfectly, they'll go back through the AI and then feed it different information to get different output. So this can take a long period of time. They're basically constantly having to correct this AI system to teach it, but the system is learning from the inputs they're giving it. This, combined with the Euphoria and game engine physics, will really work together to create a really immersive and unique experience, and we'll get back onto that in a minute. So in GTA 5, they used an animation tree, which is essentially, is the character drunk? Yes, they walk like this. Are they shooting? Yes, then they hold the gun like this. Basically, it was just working off very linear and simple inputs. So what is the difference between this animation tree and this new AI system? Well, an animation tree is pretty surefire. You can read through the whole tree and be 100% sure on what the outcome's going to be. So for example, in an animation tree, if Lucia is drunk, she will fall over. But with the AI system, it's the system itself that makes that decision. So if she's drunk and tired, the AI can make its own decision. It can decide whether she's walking down a hill, up a hill, whether it's windy, whether it's rainy. There's so many other factors that the AI takes into consideration to make a decision on whether she falls over, whether she can walk properly, and also how people around her respond to her. It's the AI's decision what happens, not an animation tree's decision. So what does this all mean? Well, firstly, it means more unique gameplay. No two people are going to have the exact same experience, because for example, if you walk somewhere at night and it's windy and it's rainy and Lucia's drunk or something like that, she might fall over, she might not. The events that happen are entirely up to the AI system to decide what happens to Lucia and how her animations take place and how she behaves. This also means great social media content. Now, we know that social media is a core part of GTA 6. We're very clear about that from the trailer. So this means that we're going to get completely unique and different content for every single person, even if they do essentially the same thing. I mentioned in one of my previous videos before I knew anything about this that the trailer was a bit worrying for me, and I got rinsed in the comments because I was saying that, for example, people were leaning out of cars and reacting to what Lucia's doing, and I don't see how they'd implement that in the game unless they had a new form of technology. And the comments were saying that I'm dumb and that I'm stupid and it's just an animation sequence and I should know that. I got battered in the comments, but it turns out I was right. Rockstar have got their own proprietary AI system to make this work. So for example, the people around you can tell what you're doing and they can read off your mood state as a character. So if Lucia's sad, if she's happy, or if some information in the game engine is input into Lucia's state, for example, she is drunk, I know I keep saying that, but it's the best example I can give, then the people around her will respond in different ways. So if she's hanging out of a car, then people around her are more likely to respond and, for example, film her. Or this person sat on the street is more likely to respond in different ways to the people around them, depending if they're happy, if they're sad, if they've had a stressful day, if they've had a good day. I'm assuming this character AI system is only really for the main characters in the game. I think that maybe the other characters reading and understanding your state of mind and your state as a character is probably going to be passed on to the other characters in the game, so they can read what's happening around them. But I think a lot of this complex animation system is probably going to be most beneficial to us as the character we are playing. So yeah, this is really exciting, and this means we're not going to get the same sort of animation sequences that we had in Red Dead Redemption 2 or GTA 5. Obviously, we knew that to an extent, but we didn't really understand how Rockstar were going to implement that. Now we do.
So hopefully this helps you understand how all of these various AI technologies could work in GTA 6. And let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to go into in the comments down below. This has been a bit of a longer video, so thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it and you did find it useful, please consider subscribing. It does mean a lot to me, and I'll see you all in the next one.